Right, it's been a rather dramatic week in Jammu and Kashmir, and joining us now, one of the key players in all that's been happening, Omar Abdullah. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. Wanted to just start off by asking if you figured out exactly what had happened to the fax machine.
I haven't yet.
I thought you were a tech expert. You should have gone in and reviewed it by now.
I haven't got my hands on that fax machine yet, but I really want to understand how you have a fax machine that allows faxes to go out, but doesn't allow faxes to come in. This is some new technology that has been introduced.
Okay, so while we wait for that tech question to be answered, I just wanted to ask you, A, about the developments of this week, and then what it potentially means for the future. If you go by what the governor said, he said there's still a lot of uncertainty on whether the numbers could have been put together. We've heard Sajjad Lone saying very clearly that people would have defected and therefore he'd have had the numbers. So I wanted to ask you a couple of questions. A, would you have definitely stood by Mehbooba Mufti in front of the governor had he invited her?
Absolutely. When Mehbooba Mufti sent the letter to the governor, it was with the consent of both the National Conference and the Congress. It's only then that she could claim to have 15 MLAs of the National Conference and 12 MLAs of the Congress. So I'm not going to leave her hanging out to dry now and say that no, we wouldn't have. We were very clear that this was an attempt at actually forming a government, nothing else.
So you would have joined the government, you would have supported it from outside?
We had also been very clear that it would have been support from outside, but there would have been a letter of support.
So it would have been a stable government, you wouldn't have...
Look, stability is to be determined by the assembly, not by the governor. The governor has to satisfy himself that is the claim genuine. After that, the stability is to be established in the House. I mean, why is it that this precedent wasn't, the precedent that the governor of Jammu and Kashmir has now set, why wasn't this used in Goa when the BJP was invited to form a government, when they didn't have the numbers? What about Karnataka after the recently concluded assembly elections, when the BJP was invited to form a government when clearly they didn't have the numbers? Or for that matter, go way back to when Prime Minister Vajpayee was invited to form a government and was Prime Minister for 13 days. Before he was unable to establish his majority in the House. The governor doesn't get to ultimately count heads. He only has to establish whether it's a genuine claim or not. And there was no horse trading in our claim. See, there's a huge difference between what the BJP and its proxies put up and what we did. We are three legitimate political parties recognized by the Election Commission with our numbers certified by the the Secretariat of the Legislative Assembly. We weren't claiming to have support from the BJP or independents, as opposed to the parallel claim that was put in after Mehbooba Mufti Sahiba sent the expression of interest. He's talking about bringing in defectors from other parties. Now, there's a massive difference. Now, in that case, sure, the governor could have asked him to show the heads, but we weren't claiming defectors. We were legitimate parties.
We have seen a couple of people drifting across, though. Ansari's gone across just yesterday.
No, he hasn't gone just yesterday. He's been gone for months now.
But I'm saying the fact that they're making this announcement, it is possible that there would have been defections.
Well, there's a contradiction in what they're saying also. I mean, on the one hand, the gentleman says that he hasn't spoken to any legislators and that he's been in no contact with anybody. On the other hand, he claims to have, in his letter, has claimed to have the support of 16 or 18 MLAs. Now, if he hasn't spoken to them, where does that support come from?
I mean, he's sort of saying that they had come to him, they had reached out to him, they've offered their support.
So, hang on. So, the conversation was one-sided. They spoke, but he didn't. He didn't hear them. I mean... Look, they're tying themselves up in knots. So basically, I mean, what they're admitting is that they were involved in horse trading. Exactly what the governor has said in his justification for this, that they were involved in the business of trying to buy MLAs.
A couple of other things that actually come out in the justification for the decision of dissolution, which is, it raises certain question marks, is A, it was an unholy alliance of people who have no political affinity for each other.
Again, it's not for the governor to decide what's holy and unholy. Why was this yardstick not used in 2015 when the BJP and PDP came together? Now, could there be an alliance more different than that? Or again, for that matter, Bihar. You have Nitish Kumar fighting an election against the BJP together with Lalu Prasad Yadav. Then suddenly deciding that he wants to dump Lalu Prasad Yadav and jump into the political bed with the BJP. Now, is that not an unholy alliance? Yet, for some reason, this yardstick is not applied to those states. Similar, I can quote similar examples across the length and the breadth of the country. Why is it that Jammu and Kashmir, and in this particular instance, is suddenly held to a higher standard? For 5 months, we demand the dissolution of the assembly, saying, look, this is a mess. Horse trading is going on. An attempt to buy MLAs is going on. We knock on every single door we can find. We knock on the Home Minister's door, we knock on the interlocutor's door, we knock on the governor's door, we knock on every door we can find, and the assembly doesn't get dissolved. Yet suddenly, miraculously, within minutes of Mehbooba Mufti Sahiba sending a letter saying that we are going to form a government, the assembly disappears.
That is also on the same day when there was no food and nobody was around.
Well, that's a whole different conversation, and I actually really look forward to having this one with the governor, because I have serious misgivings about the way in which this has been carried out.
Okay, just to set that decision, and I do want to ask you some of the broader questions. Where do we head from here? What are the implications for Jammu and Kashmir? Because I think that's one of the things that should affect and worry everyone. It's not a state where you want to play around easily with things like this. You know history, you know what has happened in the past when governments have been dismissed, when there's a claim that has therefore been made by separatists, that there's no point doing mainstream politics because Delhi interferes in some form or the other. It's been part of the discourse in Kashmir for decades now, so you don't want to play into that. One of the theories that I've heard certain BJP spokespersons saying is it would have been a government of one region or one community, and therefore it could not have been allowed.
One, let me emphatically deny that this government would have been one-sided. We would have ensured adequate representation cutting across the regions of the state and cutting across the religions of the state. But if that is the yardstick the BJP wishes to use, can I please advise them that in Assam, the Muslim population, if my information is correct, is roughly around 30%. Can we please have 30% of the Council of Ministers as Muslims? The percentage of Muslims in UP is 20% plus. Can we please have 20% of the Muslims, 20% of Yogi Adityanath's ministerial colleagues as Muslims? Let them use the yardstick that they judge us by as the same yardstick that they operate under.
So you're saying you can't in any case have any representation on the basis of religion or region. Is that a fair thing to say?
Look, I'm saying that...
Do you have to have in Kashmir representation from Kashmir and Jammu? Because at the end of the day,
no, I think it is important to make sure that all communities feel adequately represented. I would have had serious misgivings with a government in Jammu and Kashmir that did not adequately take care of sentiment and representation of all regions, including the sub-regions. Not just the plains of Jammu, but the hills of Jammu. When you talk about Ladakh, you're talking about Leh and Kargil. So I can assure you that had this government come into place, all regions, sub-regions and religious identities that make up Jammu and Kashmir would have been represented.
There's a certain view that whatever the denouement was and whichever way it played out, neither you nor the PDP are entirely dissatisfied or unhappy with this, because it does give you the chance to be martyrs, to be wronged in some way, sense out here, and yet you don't have to explain to your cadres that you have to support each other and work with each other. So potentially it gives you a boost in the election. It may well have worked out exactly the way you would have liked it to work out.
Well, that sounds more like a script of the House of Cards. That's
House
not...
of Cards is not always wrong when it
no,
comes
well,
to
no, that may not be, but this is not... I mean, we weren't as crafty as that.
I'm not saying you engineered it. I'm not saying you engineered it. I'm saying that the way it has worked out may eventually satisfy you. You may well have a secret smile when you're looking at everything that happened.
No, I'm not smiling secretly. I'm quite openly smiling, because this is not an outcome that I'm particularly unhappy with.
That's what I was saying.
Yeah, no, sure. I mean, I'd be a fool to tell you that I'm deeply unhappy with this outcome, because I'm not. That having been said, this wasn't the outcome we set out to achieve. We set out to achieve the objective of forming a government. Now, it could just as easily have backfired on us. That fax machine that didn't receive faxes could have selectively received them. It could have received the BJP and its proxies claim while refusing to receive ours, and then where would we have been? So, I mean, what we did was done purely with the objective of setting up a government and trying to avoid the sort of situation we have in the state. I mean, look, decisions are being taken today that have long-term consequences, but they're being taken by a government that is not accountable to the people. I'll give you one small example. The decision today to make J&K Bank sort of a party to the Right to Information Act. Now, this is something that has huge long-term implications for J&K Bank. It is something an elected government should have been tasked with. But it's been taken, the decision's been taken by a governor and a council of administrators that is not accountable to anybody.
So I'm just going to ask you, when it comes to that, and you said you're not entirely unhappy with the way things have panned out, when you look at what happens next, elections have to come. You and the PDP and the Congress and the BJP, for that matter, although they're more in Jammu, have to go back to the people and saying, yes, come and vote for us. And that's after the sort of turnout we just saw in the panchayat elections. Does it make your task that much more difficult? Are your workers and others going to look at you and saying, we're going to have a tougher time to talk about why mainstream politics is the right way forward, when the worst conspiracy theories of some of the separatists the separatists are going to be shrugging their heads and saying, see, we told you so, and you're seeing some of that on social media.
No, I'm sure we've seen some of it on social media, but those who have to participate in the elections will participate. What you saw unfolding a couple of days ago in Srinagar will have no bearing on the ongoing panchayat elections. In spite of the fact that the National Conference and the PDP are not participating, you'll still have healthy turnouts well into the double figures, unlike what you saw in the urban local body elections. So no, I don't think this will have as much of a bearing.
And as we head for the elections, it will be an all-out battle again between you and the PDP?
Absolutely. We're essentially fighting for the same political space.
So what are you going to tell your voters, the National Conference voters, what's the PDP going to tell people when they know if numbers can't entirely be gathered, you may well come together again afterwards?
We are not asking people to vote a coalition government. I think the people of Jammu and Kashmir need to wake up to the reality of what coalition governments have meant for the state since 2002. A lot of other states have experimented with coalitions and gone back to single-party governments. The single biggest example that you have in front of you is UP, that went through a long phase of coalition governments and then finally changed its mind and returned first Akhilesh Yadav to his own majority and subsequently the BJP. I'd like to believe that, having seen how detrimental coalition governments are to the interests of Jammu and Kashmir, that the people of Jammu and Kashmir will elect one party to govern.
But that's not that easily done, because that really means either the Congress or the National Conference have to win both in the Valley and in the Jammu region.
Not difficult to do. We've done it in the past. It's not so long ago. I mean, 96 is still well within the range of our memories.
So there are some people who are saying, but it's not yesterday anymore, that things have changed. And actually, I just wanted to, now that we are talking, I wanted to get your opinion on that. We've seen at least some editorials and comments being made that things have deteriorated in Jammu and Kashmir very sharply over the last few years. Others are saying, no, but there are signs of hope. Young people are coming out and showing participation in other ways. What is your sense? Is there a hardening of positions, more radicalization?
It's not all doom and gloom. That having been said, the situation is clearly not as comfortable as it was, let's say, in 2014, when we had parliament elections in the spring and assembly elections in the winter. I think for Prime Minister Modi, his report card on how he's handled Jammu and Kashmir will be written by how the parliament and assembly elections, how they take place. If parliament elections and assembly elections take place on time and there is a healthy turnout, I think Prime Minister Modi will be able to say that his handling, while not the best, has not been the complete disaster it's been so far. So let's wait and see.
Is that going to be a problem, though? Because, you do have, just holding parliamentary elections is tough at the best of times. Having it at the same time with state elections, is that something you think the Election Commission will struggle with, or do you think it's going to be phased out?
I see no reason why you'll struggle with it. It's the same electorate. It's going to be the same polling booths. You'll just have a few extra candidates and extra machines. You'll have to cast 2 votes instead of 1. But I think it's actually the better way to go, because it's a one-time thing. You get both things done at the same time. So your requirement for security forces, the budgetary allocations you have to make, the campaign, the candidature, all of it, you're done in, a month and a half, 2 months.
Okay, so, again, looking at the situation now, there's been some talk about if there is polarization that is kicking in elsewhere. Are those having some impact there in Jammu and Kashmir? For example, just the sort of discourse that you're often seeing on television news channels, where it's very clearly us and them, and it's becoming a staple of TV news shows in the evening to be getting some Kashmiri, extremists probably, and shout and scream at that person. Has there been a deepened polarization in your
I
view?
don't think-
Or is this seen as being drama, so a lot of people just discount it?
No, I think, there is polarization, but the TV channels haven't created it. The TV channels are basically just living off it. The BJP has attempted to polarize. They will continue to attempt to polarize. But I think day before yesterday's events will give the BJP cause for concern, in as much as they are going to have to explain to the people of Jammu how it is with 26 MLAs. They were still happy supporting an individual who has only 2 MLAs to his name. No, it's different when the BJP supported Mufti Muhammad Sayyid in 2015, because Mufti Saab had 28 to the BJP's 26. They could justify that support. But when you
The BJP has an explanation. They're saying new forces should come up, that both the National Conference and the PDP are dynastic
nobody in
parties.
Jammu is going to
Why
buy
are you
that.
supporting them? You need a third force to come up in the valley. The established parties
That's
have not
not,
been able to deliver.
that's not
I'm saying
what,
they have a
no,
reason. I'm not
that's
saying
your reason.
I'm saying that's a reason they will give.
That's not the reason that they can. That's not going to work in Jammu. When you tell people of Jammu that the seats for the BJP are about Jammu, it's about Jammu's leadership, it's about Jammu getting its own representation, it's about Jammu doing away with the supposed hegemony of Kashmir-based political parties, and then you take your 26 MLAs and put them at the beck and call of somebody who has only 2, it leaves you with a lot of explanations. This one that you're trying to sell, it won't sell anywhere in Jammu.
Well, I'm not trying to say it. I'm just saying that there's a possible line that they could take, and that you hear them saying it. It's not unusual. You see them saying it all the time in panel debates. But talking about what the BJP is and is not going to say, how are things now between you and Ram Madhav and how do you respond to his comments?
I have had no contact with him of late.
Other than a rather prolonged Twitter war.
No, I only had 2 tweets. Look.
He's apologized of sorts. He said, I've taken back my remarks.
He hasn't. He's withdrawn his remarks, but he wasn't man enough to apologize, and that's fine. I didn't expect him to be. But look,
does it bother you that, you've been External Affairs Minister under Atal Bihari Vajpayee in a BJP-led government, let's not forget. So then to be called a Pakistani, or this is a Pakistani plot.
I would not have reacted if he'd called me a Pakistani, because I couldn't care less what he or anybody else calls me. I've been called far worse on Twitter, and it doesn't bother me at all. What actually bothered me was that he not only suggested, but actually alleged that my party acts at the behest of Pakistan. Now, this is a huge disservice and a disrespect to all those thousands of colleagues of mine who have died since 1987 for the simple reason that we didn't act at Pakistan's behest, that we didn't join the violent campaign that started in Jammu and Kashmir from 1987-88. If we had to act at Pakistan's behest, I wouldn't have lost as many colleagues as I did. So I wasn't unhappy because of what he said about me. Like I said, I couldn't care less what he says about me. But you don't disrespect colleagues of mine who are no longer alive. That I won't take.
He sort of implied he was almost being facetious about it. He said, I'm not doubting your patriotism.
You put smileys and emojis. What are you trying to suggest?
Mehbooba Mufti were also sending funny tweets back at each other.
Yeah, but we weren't alleging that the other person was a Pakistani or an anti-national. We were just sort of taking a light-hearted view of that fax machine that you talked about.
Right, yes. Okay. Is this the season? So I'm just sort of trying to extrapolate from this going forward. We've seen all sorts of strange things happening in politics in the recent past. Is this the pattern we're going to see? You're seeing the Bahujan Samaj Party and the Samajwadi Party now coming together into a formal alliance in Uttar Pradesh, and it's looking as if it's going to endure. Are these signs of something that is going to change in Jammu and Kashmir even going forward?
I'll go back to the answer I gave you earlier. I think it's safe to talk for the PDP as well in this case. Look, all parties are going to fight to try and form a government of their own. We are not looking for alliances and post-poll scenarios.
But after what's happened this week, for the NC, PDP would no longer be considered an untouchable.
Look, I didn't even consider the PDP untouchable in 2015. Let's not forget, I think it was an interview to your channel that I said that I'm willing to extend a hand of friendship to Mufti Muhammad Sayyid Saab and provide unconditional support of our MLAs to keep him from tying up with the BJP. He said no at that time. If the PDP had accepted National Conference and Congress's unconditional offer of support in 2015, perhaps the history of Jammu and Kashmir would have been very different today.
Right. Let me just get you in on national politics before I allow you to escape. Your sense of what's going to happen at the national level? Mahagathbandhan, lots of little state fights. How do you see it all panning out?
I think what we need to see at the national level is sort of somewhat mirrored by what you've seen in J&K. Not a big Mahagathbandhan, but strategic coming together of what otherwise were perhaps traditional rivals in a bid to unseat the BJP and its friends. I mean, case in point being, let's say, Telangana. I think it would have been unimaginable to have seen Chandrababu Naidu driving up to Rahul Gandhi's residence, but it's happened. So I think that's what we need to do more than the sort of grand 15, 18 people sitting on stage together lambasting Prime Minister Modi, because I think that actually plays into the Prime Minister's hands.
So lots of state-level alliances, which you think is going to be the answer, and is that what the opposition is starting to talk about?
Well, I don't know what the opposition is going to do, because I mean I'm a very small cog in a very large machine, but that's the way I would go about it.
Okay, and from whatever your conversations with the PDP are right now, there will be no legal challenge to this dissolution.
I haven't had any conversations with the PDP about a legal challenge. All I'm saying is that we don't have grounds to mount one. With the PDP to mount one, then obviously we would support that.
You would support the PDP?
Well, look, I mean, how you mean I'll go to the Supreme Court or whichever court they mount the challenge in and say we didn't agree to form a government together? Of course we did. So if I'm asked, that's what I'll say.
All right. Do you see the third front challenge building up in the Sajjad, Lone and other formations continuing to build up, or you think this is it? Has he shot his bolt?
Well, I think he's had 5 months of being projected as the imminent and incoming chief minister, which he's used to good effect. Let's see. I've always said that it's the wisdom of the people that ultimately will prevail. Look, I have no problem with anybody occupying the office of the chief minister of Jammu and Kashmir. Any person from the state has the right to aspire to that office and occupy it. But it has to be done the right way. Go out, get the people to vote for you, get your MLAs and win. The office of the Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir is not one to be occupied by buying and selling MLAs.
And you were not doing that. You're categorical about it.
I'm absolutely 100% categorical that there was no question of buying and selling.
Well, actually, you wouldn't have needed to. If all of you stood together and you were not buying people into preventing them from going across or paying them to prevent them from going across,
no,
you probably wouldn't have
look, we have the anti-defection laws. We didn't need to buy. We didn't need to buy anybody to stay with us.
All right, thank you so much, Omar Abdullah, for talking to us, and let's hope at some point you do solve the mysteries of what exactly happens to fax machines. And perhaps you should try and find new technologies. Twitter actually seems to work quite well. If you and Mehbooba Mufti can tweet to each other, perhaps you should have an ability to tweet to Raj Bhavans and get that set up as a legitimate way to set up governments. And that might actually help. Thank you so much for talking to us.